Alright, so Unit 9, Scale 1B. How do we use a sketch of a trig function to graph, well, other trig functions? So the idea here is we want to make an actual graph. So here you have the directions up top. If you'd like to do it on the calculator, it's pretty neat. Follow those steps and try it out. We're going to jump into actually doing it by hand because for the most part we're going to have to. The start's exactly the same. Alright, we have y equals 3 sine x, so we know the amplitude, 3 sine 2x, I apologize. So the amplitude is 3. Whatever's in front of the x, always going to be the frequency. The period, says using degrees, is always going to be 360 over f. If it said radians, it would be 2 pi, so it's 360 over 2, which is 180. Alright, so the midline. The midline is always what comes after the plus or minus in the problem. That's going to be this 1 right here. The max, alright, the max is figured out by figuring out how far up we go from the midline. Well, the amplitude tells us how far up and down we go from the midline. So if the midline is at 1, here's my sketch, and that's the midline of 1, I'm going to be going up 3. So 1 plus 3 is 4 on a good day, and the minimum will be 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. So I'm going to have my max at 4, my min at negative 2. After that, I just need to know where it ends. So I know it ends at the period, right? The period is the length of one cycle. It's the period of time for one cycle. That's the definition of period, so it kind of fits. So it ends at 180. So I'm going to go a little hash mark. Oh, that's bad. So here's 180. And here's my 90. And I'm going to plot some points. So it is a sine curve, which means it starts on the line. I should get a marker out, not a highlighter. So it starts on the line. That's the sine curve. Starts on the line. So it's going to start here. That's your first point. It's going to end on the line, and the middle is on the line. Since it's a positive sine curve, it goes up first. Alright, goes up to there. And then in between the 90 and 180, it goes down. Beginning, end, middle, and then the middle of what's left. Always how we plot points. Now, I'm plotting with a big, huge, fat stylus here, which is almost impossible, so my graphs aren't going to be as good as yours, but that's your starter sketch. You take that, now we just got to transfer it. And that didn't take me very long. Would have taken me half the time if I didn't have to explain it all. So, I do need to have the x-axis on here. So I'm going to draw the line here at 0. This is my x-axis, right? And that's what you have to put on the graph. So, you've already done all that last class, and if it wasn't great, well, we're going to make it better because we're just going to keep doing it. It does get better as we practice it more. So now we're going to need to transfer, and that's all we're doing today. So the idea is if you can make that starter sketch, well, then you can definitely make the graph because we're just going to put it on a grid. There is nothing new that you're really learning today, maybe a little bit here and there, but not much. Okay, so we're going to transfer it over. All right, get my purple pen out. I'm going to have 1 here. I'm going to scribble that out because it's no longer the x-axis. I'm going to go up 2, 3, 4, put a line here at 4. I'm going to go down 0, negative 1, negative 2. Put that there. On the bottom, I'm going to label 0. I'm going to go 3, 2, 3. That's going to be my 90. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3 more. 3, 1, 2, 3, yep. There's an extra one here, of course, to get to 180. Go ahead and plot my points now. All right, I have it starting here. I have it ending on the line, and the middle is also on the line. In between the 0 and the 90, it has to go up. That's where it is. Between the 90 and the 180, it has to go down. Connect the dots. Well, that looks really good. I'm getting lucky here. Look at that. That is a very nice sine curve. I probably won't do that ever again. But anyways, I forgot one thing. I need to label 0, and then just label the x-axis, actually. So there's my x-axis. I've got everything labeled, and I'm good to go. But even when we're asked to graph, okay, or especially when we're asked to graph, we want to see this starter curve. You need to start there and then make the sketch. Otherwise, you'll end up with a graph that looks like a mixture of sine and cosine, and you'll have your math teacher scratching their head going, what is that? Moving on. Alright, so I'm going to jump back into it. So the amplitude is always what is in front of the sine or cosine. It's 2. The frequency, alright, is always right here. So that's your f. Come on, make an f. That's 3. It's always what's in front of the x. And the period, it depends on what we're doing, so this is going to be 2 pi over f because it says radians. So it's going to be 2 pi over 3. That's where it ends. Now, you may not know where 2 pi over 3 is. If you were thinking in degrees, that's 360 over 3, which is 120, but it doesn't really matter. You only have to label the beginning and the end, all right? And the middle, but that's not too hard to label here. So, midline is always the plus or minus part, so it's -2, so it's down at -2. The max is going to be figured out by simply adding the midline plus the amplitude or the midline minus the amplitude to get the minimum. So if I do -2 plus the amplitude, which is 2, I'm going to get the max, which is kind of weird, is all the way up at 0. Okay? To find the min, I'm going to do that -2 that I have here, and then I'm going to subtract 2 because I have to go down the amplitude, which is down to -4. So I'm going to make my starter sketch first, just like I always do, just so I can make sure it looks nice, it's perfect, everything's good. So the midline is at -2. The max we said was up here at 0, and the minimum is -4. Alright, now we have to find the end. So there's our middle, there's our end, our little hash marks. The end is at 2 pi over 3. So that means the middle is, well, half of 2 pi over 3 would be 1 pi over 3. Okay? But if you didn't know that, don't label it. Don't put down wrong information. The beginning and the end, probably going to be enough to get you full credit here. Okay, from there I got to play connect the dots. I have to put the dots on there. So it's a cosine curve. Cosine always starts above or below. So a cosine curve is supposed to look like this. So it's going to start above. It's got to end above. The middle's got to be at the base. And then in between, there we have it. That was horrible. See, my cosine or my sine curve was so pretty. That curve, the first half of it is ugly. The end of it's not so nice either. All right, so there is my starter sketch. Now I'm going to transfer that to the other graph. Okay, so again, -2 goes in the middle. I'm going to come up, and I'm going to skip count here, so that'll be -1, that'll be 0, so it spaces it out some. You don't have to ever skip count, but you can. All right, so then I'm going to go to 2 pi over 3, so I like to count by 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3, hash mark 1, 2, 3, that'll be my 1 pi over 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that'll be 2 pi over 3. We know the curve starts above, it ends above, it's down here, and then in between, it should be exactly in the middles on the line. It was a positive cosine curve, so it should start above and end above. If it's negative, all right, it just starts below and ends below. And I connect the dots. It should be curvy. You should be thinking of these as half of an arc. This right here would be another half, which makes it the bottom half of a circle. And then it keeps going over. And that is not pretty. And the one thing I did forget, label X and scribble it out. I forgot that over here. Look at that. That's bad. And that's it. The next problem has the one new thing that you might be learning here today, I do believe. All right, the amplitude is still a half. You can write 0.5, it's fine. The frequency is always what's in front of the x. This time it's pi over 2. That might be new. All right, so pi over 2 curves by 360. That's really weird and not very helpful. You look at the one above, you know, at least you can say this is 3, where is it? Right, 3 curves by 360, right? So you have one curve by essentially 120 or 2 pi over 3, so you have 3 curves by 360. But in this problem, yeah, that's not helpful at all. This pi over 2 curves by 360 is not what we're really looking for. So we're going to have to find the period, and we're going to have to use that. Now, we always use the period anyways, but in this problem, we have to use the period. So we're going to do, again, just what we've done before. This is going to be 2 pi over the frequency, pi over 2. Now you may not remember this, but dividing by a fraction, right? We use copy the top, change the division to multiplication. So change this division sign right here to multiplication, and then we flip. Copy, change, flip is the gimmick. All right? Or dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we multiplied by the reciprocal of pi over 2, which is 2 over pi. At any rate, when we do this, it works out really nice and things cancel. The pi's cancel. Yippee. 2 times 2, that's 4. So our period is going to be 4, which means how long is one curve? Oh yeah, it's 4 units. Not hard to count to 4. In fact, it's not hard to count to 4 and find the middle of that and find the middle of all the rest of it. That's the easy part now. So this question actually starts out to be a much harder question and ends up easier. Our amplitude, still the part at the end, so it's plus 1. Our max, all right, we're going to take our 1, which is our midline, and we're going to add the amplitude to it, which is 0.5, so we get 1.5. Well, that's a horrible 1.5, but you get the idea. Our min is going to be 1 minus 0.5, which gives us just 0.5. So we're going to jump down here now and make our starter sketch. And again, I still want to see that starter sketch before you start putting over there. That way it doesn't look really ugly. It's amazing how ugly some of these graphs can get. All right, so our maximum is 1.5. Our minimum is 0.5. And we said it was going to end at 4. So it's not really hard to count over to 4. So here's boom, boom, boom. So 4, 2. We're good to go. I can't see what kind of curve this is. Alright, so this is a sine curve, which means it begins and ends right on the line. So switch gears. It begins and ends on the line. So here's the beginning. Here is the ending. The middle is on it. And right in between it goes up. And then right in between the beginning and the end it always goes down if it's a positive sine curve. Alright, so now we play connect the dots. This is ugly because my starter sketch isn't so pretty, which is why they don't allow those on the regions. You have to do an actual graph. But the starter sketch is the way to start. So, I did forget my 0 again. That's going to be down here. So there's the x-axis. And now we can get to it. So copy it over. We have 1. I'm going to skip count and then put 1.5 here. Skip count, put 0.5 here, which means right there is going to be my x-axis. Alright, I need to have my 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I'm going to skip count. I'm not going to make it perfect, so that's going to be 0. That'll be 1. That'll be 2, 3, and then 4. Alright, I could have spaced it out even more if I wanted to, but I just chose to do that. It looks like it'll fit and look nice with how far I spaced out the 1.5 and the 0.5. So it begins on the line, it ends on the line, the middle is on the line. That's your sine curve. And I'm going to scribble out the x over there because that's not the x-axis anymore. In between the beginning and the middle, it's going up. In between the middle and the end, it's going down. And that's your positive sine curve. You can see it. That's what it's supposed to look like. That is not my best sine curve, but it's good enough. Now I need to label the x-axis because that is important to label it. And we're good to go. Probably should put arrows in the ends of the lines. I don't think I have. Okay, last example. Amplitude, again, what's in front? So 1/2, I'm going to write 0.5. Frequency is what's in front of the x always, so it's pi over 5. The period is always going to be 2 pi over the frequency. Again, this is that whole copy, change, flip, so 2 pi times 5 over pi. This is really over 1, even though it's not written. And now we just cancel. The pi's cancel. I'm left with 2 times 5, which is 10. So the period, and again, you need to memorize these definitions. You're probably getting sick of me saying it. If you're one of my students, I'm sure you are. But you have to know those definitions and what they mean. Because if you don't understand what 10 stands for, it doesn't do you any good. You need to know that 10 is the length of one curve. So one curve is 10 units long. The frequency really doesn't do us much good to discuss the definition of it on the question like this. So the midline is how much it shifted up or down. Well, that's 0. That makes it pretty easy. The max is going 0 plus 0.5, so it's still 0.5. The minimum is 0 minus 0.5, so that's negative 1/2. We're in good shape. So the x-axis is going to be the center this time. Works out. Kind of neat. We have our midline at 0. We're going to be up to 0.5. We're going to be down to negative 0.5. It's supposed to end at 10. Alright, play connect the dots. It's a cosine curve. It's positive. So positive cosine curve here is going to start above, it ends above, the middle is at its lowest, and then in between it's on the lines. It makes a perfect V. If you connect it to make a perfect V, alright, you're not going to like the grade that you get. So don't connect it to make a V. You want to connect it and have it rounded. If you miss your point, horrible like that, go back and redo it. That doesn't get you any credit. Okay. So I just realized that the graph says to go, and it has an actual domain here. The domain being this part right here. That we're supposed to graph it to 15, and I only graphed it to 10. That's not really following the directions so well. So we got to graph it to 15. So I got to go 5 more. So hopefully my eraser is going to work, because I'm not going to be happy if it won't erase that X. Look at that, it did. Alright, we got to extend it a little bit. Wrong color. And mark of 15. We have a little hash mark. So I need to take half of the curve. I need to take this first half of the curve, right? Because I got to go another 5. So I got to go 5 more and do this first half of the curve. But I'm going to take the whole thing and slide it over here. I need to add on and keep going. Now some people don't like to do that, just add half a curve. They like to graph in whole curves. So I'm going to graph in the whole curve, but if you're a person that can see that half a curve, you go right ahead and graph it. So a whole curve would start here, and then I would go tick mark and then over to 20 right here, and they would just graph a whole other curve. So beginning, okay, and I'll graph this one in green, I guess, beginning, end, middle, and then it just follows that same pattern. Now I'm not going to connect the dots for the rest of it, alright, but there's my curve, and then I would take, when I'm done, and erase it. That way I don't lose any credit. If the eraser would work, I would erase it, because apparently it's not going to. No, it is. Make a liar out of me. So there you go, and there is your graph from 0 to 15. So now we got to sketch that down below. Let's copy it over. I have 0. Alright, I'm just going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. It's important that you go down the exact same amount as you go up, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't do that, guess what? You'll lose credit. It has to be exactly the same. So 4 down, 4 up is my half up and down. Start at 0. Alright, 1, 2, 3 is 5. 1, 2, 3 is 10. 1, 2, 3 is 15. We're good to go. Alright. Except going by threes isn't such a good idea because I have to have a mark in between. I don't want to put that mark halfway. So I'm actually going to erase that. I'm sorry if you just copied that all down. And I'm going to change that so that I have those nice tick marks that I can do. So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so, and then there is my 5, my halfway point. 1, 2, 3, 4. There is my 10. And now it works out that I have nice points on those, what we call lattice points. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have my halfway point in 15. And we're good to go. Alright, so cosine curve. Here we go. It starts above. It's supposed to end at 10 and be above. Looking up above here, there's an ending at 10 above. In the middle, it's supposed to be at the lowest point. Halfway in between, it's on the lines. Alright, and then the pattern continues. Goes down. Now I play connect the dots. Try to make it curvy. If you miss it, erase and redo it. Although it's kind of hard here to erase and redo it. Alright. Got the x-axis labeled appropriately, and we're all set. Okay, don't forget to write your summary down below, and then get that out at the beginning of next class so we can check it. Thank you.